get this?
I think we're recording.
One of those, this March, one of those little bins that they do those.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. The best. It's just root beer.
I'm, again, very sorry.
Get hungry, we can have a sample.
Good evening. I would like to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father, inspire us in your ideals through our thoughts and actions. Help us to progress in our endeavors for the city and its people. Through your knowledge of our needs, we ask your guidance so that we will be successful and beneficial to all. In Jesus' name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Member Olson.
Here, welcome everyone.
Member Barentine.
Present.
Member Cuesta. Member Martinez.
Present.
Member Wink.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
Present.
5 present, 1 absent. Absent Member Cuesta.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5, consideration of minutes of the previous meeting. I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve the minutes for the regular council meeting of May 7th.
And I'll second.
Okay. Are there any additions or corrections? I actually have one correction to the minutes. Under Mayor's Choice, the motion to move into executive session with City Attorney to discuss a personnel matter under CRS Section 246402 and for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS Section 246402-4B. I believe that it should be to move into executive session, remove with City Attorney to discuss a personnel matter, and for the purpose of receiving legal advice from the City Attorney on specific legal questions under CRS Section 246402. Did you get that?
I think that sounds reasonable, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Do we need a new motion?
No.
Okay. To accept as amended?
Yes, if whoever made the motion will change their motion just to accept as amended.
I move to accept as amended.
Okay.
Does it need to be seconded?
It needs second?
And I'll second the amended.
Okay, thank you. Please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 5 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6, recognition of scheduled public comment. Our first speaker this evening is Matt Millen, an Englewood resident. Will address council regarding ransomware attacks. Good evening, Mr. Millen. Okay, just come right up to the podium and speak into the mic if you'll give your name and your address.
Yeah, Matt Millen, 901 Englewood Parkway, I-314, just over here in the,
All right.
the building. But yeah, I run and founded the Denver Crypto Group. We're a small business here in Englewood. Primary goal is just educating and promoting awareness about blockchain and cryptocurrencies and digital assets. My full-time job is helping our members benefit from that. And so I get asked a lot, about some of these ransomware things and different cybersecurity issues. And the topic came up, what are the local governments doing about this stuff? And, I'm not really sure. So I wanted to just take 5 minutes, kind of give you guys some points and areas of concern I think you should be aware of, and then that was kind of the point of it. So I'll just jump into it here. The ransomware is very, very profitable, and it's only becoming increasingly more so. The infrastructure that the strains are going after, are very, it's government agencies and large corporations. Those are the primary targets because they need, access to critical data on a daily basis. That's taken away, and there aren't proper backups. Things can really grind to a halt. You saw with CDOT and in Atlanta. Just millions of dollars of damages caused by these different strains of just computer viruses, basically locking down the hard drives of the computers. A single strain called CryptoWall has cost $325 million already, and that's just one of dozens that are out there. Like I was saying, any kind of structure or agency that needs access to data on a daily basis is very vulnerable. And if there's not already protocols in place to prevent it, and it happens, your recourse after the fact is almost nothing. You've got to hire a private company, come in and do all these other things. And so I'm really encouraging taking preventative steps. And I've got, kind of 4 just basic things here that, hopefully you guys are aware of. If you're not, there's definitely lots of people out there that will, help you close that knowledge gap. But just having off-site backups to the data, and having whitelisted applications and programs that run on the computer systems. Your admin is controlling everything that gets put on there. It goes a very, very long way to making these things much more difficult, and if they do happen, to really taking out some of the cost and the overhead of, getting yourself back to normal, basically, and how things were before. And it comes in generally through suspicious email links, that somebody just wherever on one of the computers connected to the network clicks on, and then it spreads and it goes through everything. There's a hostage manual out there for people that get affected by ransomware. It's really, really great. It tells you kind of the first immediate steps that you need to take, and then how to prevent a lot of these different avenues of attack, or at least how to alleviate them. So is that something you all are aware about? Is it on the radar for you guys? This stuff's only going to be becoming more relevant as it's they're just making millions and millions of dollars doing it. That was about it.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Millen? Councilmember Olson.
I guess were you aware that we had ransomware as a city? That we did experience a ransomware event?
In the city of Englewood.
Yeah.
I am not. I knew about CDOT and a few others, but I did not. Sorry about that.
We'll speak to it then in the council member time. Thank you. Just was curious.
Right. Thank you very much for coming to present. You did a great job for your first time.
Come on.
Thank you, Mr. Millen. Our next public speaker is Doug Cohn, an Englewood resident. He will address council regarding historic preservation. Good evening, Mr. Cohn.
Good evening. Doug Cohn, 3051 South Marion Street. Have 2 things tonight. One, I have some of these flyers on the back table. This coming Sunday, 2 p.m. at the Englewood High School, we're going to have a Memorial Day celebration, thinking about what Memorial Day was intended to be. Remembering those who died and those who never came home at all, and celebrating those who are alive. That's what Memorial Day is all about. And I haven't worked on this program before, but I got to thinking this year as I've been working on this part of the program, 3 classmates. Randy Penn's brother, Ed, died in Vietnam in '66. And Jerry Potter, he and Ed and I were on the football team. He died in '67. And my brother-in-law died in 1970 of Agent Orange. It's real personal for me this year. So 2 o'clock Sunday at the high school. You'd be welcome to come. Part 2. The Historical Society got a really interesting phone call on Saturday from an author living in Seattle. She wanted to know what we knew about the Englewood Molkery Sanitarium, Molkery. The wife of the person she's writing about stayed at the facility in the early 1900s. What is a molkery? Molkery is a German word for a milking barn. Medically, the idea was to have the patients stay on the upper floor of a building, and the milk cows would stay below them on the first floor, and the sounds and the odors would be soothing and would provide treatment for the people upstairs. You say, what? In the 1880s, Baron von Richthofen's castle over in Montclair, he built that castle as a molkery. And actually, there's only 2 I've found in the entire world, Montclair and the one right here in Englewood. Over there, if you have a chance to get over to Montclair Park, the building's open now. Down in the basement was where the cows stayed, and then upstairs, all the people stayed. He experimented with it as a tuberculosis cure. Didn't work for that. Tried it for a little while, it just didn't work very well with the... it's not a solution for TB. He later tried to work with the mentally ill using that kind of therapy, but his neighbors complained about all the naked people running around on the streets, and he had to stop the program pretty short. And that's where it comes to Englewood. Emily Thomas began that program, a similar program here in Englewood in 1901, 5 years before Swedish Hospital was started. And the Englewood Molkery would treat mentally ill people only, and those who were legally insane. The idea was the same. She believes that the sounds and the smells could help mentally ill people regain a footing and regain their lives. She started with 10 beds. The building was located over at 3590 South Clarkson, right at Clarkson and 285. On the northeast corner, there's a big empty lot with a concrete wall around the back side of it. That was the place. And I walked around there the other day, and there's a big concrete foundation in that field. To start with, she had 10 beds in her facility, and it expanded to 18. The courts sentenced the insane to time at the molkery. She gained quite a reputation, and by the 20s, there were ads in magazines as far away as Brooklyn telling about the treatment and success. Sometime around 1930, she moved the whole operation over to 3700 South Galapago and expanded the facility from there. If you think about it, what a crazy idea. But then you have a second thought and you say, well, we're starting to use that animal therapy again now with service animals and other kind of therapies like that. So maybe she was just 80 or 90 or 100 years early. I think Mrs. Thomas, Emily Thomas, and the Englewood Molkery Sanitarium, another example of innovation here in Englewood. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Cohn? Thank you, Mr. Cohn. Moving on to agenda item 7, recognition of unscheduled public comment. Our first speaker this evening is Jerry Walker. He will be speaking on the homeless follow-up. Good evening, Mr. Walker.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, fellow citizens of Englewood. My name is Jerry Walker, and I'd like to start out tonight by referring a gentleman by the name of Mr. Aristotle, who said, At best, man is the noblest of all animals. Separated from law and justice, he is the worst. Now, why do I say that? We hold every citizen in Englewood completely legally responsible for the size of every weed in the alley behind his house. We actually have police go and check the size and ticket the house that has the weeds. However, if a homeless person sleeps in the backyard where that weed is growing, he's simply asked to move on. So therefore, the law of trespass is not actually enforced on homeless people. Now, I have a map of Englewood up here. Some of you may recognize it, those who live in Englewood. And I want you to look at that map very carefully and understand that every inch of property on that map is owned by either the city government, a homeowner, or a business owner. So I would like you to look very carefully and pick out the place where the homeless can sleep that they're not trespassing. Yes, there is no place. Don't worry about it. And therein lies the problem, is that we have people living in our community who really have no place to live in our community. We have some churches, we have some places that want to welcome the homeless here, that want to enable the homeless here, but when the nighttime comes, they have no place for the homeless to sleep. So whose problem is that? Is that the problem of the community? Is that the problem of the churches? Or is it a problem of the homeless? Interesting question, I thought. So, my daddy once said something. He said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I'll tell you what, that's what we have with the homeless here. We do the same thing over and over, and we get the same result. And the result is crime. And we have a place in this city that a lot of crime has pointed to on Broadway in the 4300 block. And if that was a bar and had that much crime associated with it, we'd probably shut it down. No doubt in my mind about that. So why hasn't that been investigated for all the crime that is attached to that? To the people who have been assaulted, to the people who have been attacked, threatened, to the people who have been, I believe, raped at one time, to the people who actually work there, and to the people who go there and receive something. This place is only open 2 days a week, and it has a major amount of crime work that goes on in this city. And my question is, why is it still there? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Are there any questions for Mr. Walker? Seeing none, thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Coween Dickerson.
I'm the follow-up.
Oh, you're the, okay, I see. Thank you.
Coween Dickerson, 2835 South Pennsylvania Street, here in Englewood. While Mr. Walker set forth the problems with police actions or inaction and the loss of business, there are related issues of enforcement of the zoning regulations relating to this property used by Giving Heart. Our zoning regulations are to protect the public health, welfare, and to provide retail businesses and services to residents conveniently along major arterials. As we have seen, the businesses have been negatively impacted, and we have lost one already, a second is up for sale, and a third is relocating to Littleton. Yet the question remains, why and how is Giving Heart allowed to operate there? There is a table of allowed uses for all the zone districts. In this MUB2 zone along Broadway, the closest allowed use to what they're doing is as an emergency temporary shelter for housing and or food. This requires a conditional use permit, which requires a review and approval subject to a public hearing. The only other possible use is a limited use for a religious institution, which Giving Heart is not. It is not a church, it is not a religious institution at all, nor is Giving Heart an accessory of a religious institution or a church. So they don't qualify under that either. Since Giving Heart's activity is not listed, and it is an atypical use, Giving Heart's activity could be approved by the city manager if it is similar in nature, function, and duration to an allowed use. The most significant criteria, and there are many, for deciding the use in question, Giving Heart's actual operation is allowed, is the impact on adjacent properties created by the proposed use will not be greater than that of other uses allowed in the zoning district. From what we know and have seen, the impact of Giving Heart on adjacent properties has been devastating. There does not appear to be a single reason for allowing Giving Heart to continue at this location, and many reasons for closing them down at that location. Why do we have zoning regulations, licensing procedures, muni codes, if such operations as Giving Heart can exist outside of them and not be subject to them, and residents and businesses suffer because GH is there? Another code bites the dust.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Are there any questions for Ms. Dickerson? Seeing none, thank you. Our next speaker this evening is J.J. Margiotto. I don't know if I pronounced it right this evening. Margiotto, okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you play video too, please?
Was residing at the Nicholsville encampment. You'll remember that when it was recently moved from Ballard to Wallingford. And it kind of looks into what kind of screenings they do or don't do at many of these city-run districts. The rural tiny homes nestled next to condos and businesses in Wallingford is one of 6 city-sanctioned homeless encampments. And the last place Christopher Teal called home. In a press release, the Nicholsville encampment said they were shocked that Teal could be responsible for violently raping a woman inside a Vilan Shen's bathroom. The residents here didn't want to talk about their screening process today, but Dr. Scott Morrow in a statement said they were not aware of Teal's criminal history or the fact that Teal had a bench warrant, which means there was a court order to arrest Teal. Morrow says the encampment never checks for bench warrants because it's not required. Although the person operating the Nicholsville North Lake encampment would not talk to us today, we did talk to some experts here and other here in Seattle. Richard Horn is with the Low-Income Housing Institute and lives in contract with Seattle to run many of the sanctioned encampments. He says the rape incident is horrific. Richard isn't surprised because he says we have a mental health crisis. As a case manager, he sees both sides. He says they need to help everyone, no matter their criminal history, but he also wants a stronger screening process so he knows how to tailor the care he gives the homeless. Richard says encampments check the sex offender registry, but he's concerned to learn that there are thousands of bench warrants that go unchecked by encampments. In Seattle, Hannah Kim for TV.
So the reason I had that video shown tonight, that actually happened 3 days ago in Seattle. We're on a collision course, ladies and gentlemen, from Englewood. We are letting the homeless benefit at the cost of the safety of our residents, our businesses, and our property owners. Right now at the 4300 block, there is 13 separate businesses. Of those 13 separate businesses, 60% are moving. 60. There are currently only 5 businesses left that have been there since Giving Heart has moved in. We do have loitering laws, no vagrancy laws, trespass laws.
Can you finish quickly?
Yes. We do have those laws that our police officers are not going through to make sure that they're being enforced. We're heading for disaster. We're not having these issues in Greenwood Village, Lone Tree, Highlands Ranch, or Centennial, and it's all happening at the cost of our businesses and our residents.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Margiotto? Seeing none, thank you very much. Our next unscheduled public speaker this evening is Jill Schaffer.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Jill Schaffer, and I live at 4399 South Acoma Street. And it's kind of ironic that I would follow that video, but I've lived in my house for almost 30 years, and this is the worst that I've seen in my neighborhood. I have 2 teenage girls that are at home during the day. I'm in Golden at work, and there's been 2 people arrested because of warrants out for them. They were called because of their bad behavior, like signs of drug use, and they were arrested. My son's car got stolen right out of his driveway after I witnessed what I thought was a drug deal, and they were casing his driveway. So I just need help. I want to feel safe. I pay my taxes, I pay my mortgage, and where is everybody? I mean, I have the right to peaceful enjoyment, but it's not happening. People are sitting alongside Radcliffe because I'm in the 4300 block of Acoma, smoking crack in their cars. Everybody's talking about how good Giving Heart is for the homeless. What about the people with homes? What about us? I mean, it's getting absurd. And I can't spend all my time worrying about my daughters. I can't. And they're the ones calling. They're calling the police because they feel unsafe in our home. We need help. I don't know how it's going to happen, but we need help. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Schaffer? Thank you for coming. We'll have some responses. Our next unscheduled public speaker is, I'm probably going to butcher this, Vilan Shen. If you will correct me, I would be very grateful.
No, you did great. It's Vilan Shen. Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I've been an Englewood resident for more than 10 years, and I'm here to represent Kent Sellers and my boss, Gino, who I think came to speak to you before about our ability to host wine tastings at the store. I'm an associate there, and he would be here himself tonight if he was not on his honeymoon. I felt like it was important for us to still be represented here and kind of speak our case. I think really we would love to be granted the ability to have host wine tastings at our store, and it really comes down to our ability to be competitive as a small business in Englewood, both to compete with neighboring wine stores, say in Denver, but also with the bigger stores who just have a competitive edge against us with, large bulk sales and such. And I think the other thing is that people think of wine tastings as kind of a free-for-all for everyone to come in and, imbibe on free liquor. But really there's more to it. I think that we think of it as a way to showcase our knowledge and our passion about wine. And we have customers who come in and ask for it because it's a way for them to learn about our products and culture, really, too. And so that's another aspect of it. And also I think in the kind of time of online retailers, kind of the in-person retailers have to find a new way of doing business. And more we're asked to give customers more of an experience than just, a good selection of goods that we're selling. And so the wine tasting really is a way for us to provide that experience. It gives us an opportunity to interact with our customers in a deeper way, because right now we're just kind of, showing them where the wines are and then checking them out. And so I think it really gives us an opportunity to do business in a better way. And what else? And, you know, I know that it's a concern that it would be harder to enforce the laws and the rules around the liquor purveying if we were to host these wine tastings. But, you know, we do that every day. And so we would continue to do it with rigor if we were allowed to host the tastings. And in fact, we take it very seriously. And you know, in our neighborhood, because there's so much traffic, because of the King Soopers and the other, you know, the pet store and Mod Market there, it really kind of, I think our store adds a certain asset to rounding out all of the businesses in that area, and the wine tasting would just be another aspect of that. So I would encourage you to vote yes on the measure, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And I do have a question. Yes. What is the name again?
Kent Sellers.
Oh, Kent Sellers. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next public speaker this evening is Paul Skaczynski. He has come to address council regarding ADUs. Good evening, Mr. Skaczynski.
Good evening. My name is Paul Skaczynski, a citizen of Englewood and property owner of 4260 South Elati Street, where my wife and I have lived for more than 46 years. Honorable Mayor Pro Tem and members of Englewood City Council, my family and I began planning for an addition on our detached garage off the alley nearly 3.5 years ago. Since then, we have undergone the following work in preparation for the planned addition. We've had a giant cottonwood tree removed and the stump ground down, replaced our entire clay sewer pipe, had the property surveyed, the soil tested down to 30 feet, the electrical service moved from the house to the existing garage and then underground back to the house, paid for the services of a structural engineer and an architect, petitioned our neighbors as to any objections to our plans, consulted with various officials in the building department, and attended numerous meetings with the Planning and Zoning Commission. We've spent more than $25,000 and haven't broken ground yet. So why the delay? Well, after many consultations with the building department, a senior employee, having become very familiar with our living situation, informed me that the Planning and Zoning Commission had been discussing a change to current zoning ordinances to allow accessory dwelling units on properties such as my R1C and others. This means that perhaps 4 years or more, the topic has been studied, discussed, parsed, shredded, revised, put on hold, and revisited. And it has been presented to hopeful Englewood citizens at several town hall meetings, and I've attended all of those. There's obviously support among the citizens of Englewood, and the commission itself seems to support the change. ADUs have been approved in many other municipalities around the metro area and the nation. It seems that ADUs have become a national trend because they help to accommodate the increasing number of multi-generation families. They also help to provide more affordable housing options and result in increasing population and tax revenues. We and many other citizens of Englewood are anxiously awaiting a proposal from the Commission to be presented to Council for review. I ask you to encourage the Planning and Zoning Commission to move this proposal forward without delay, and I hope you will approve the proposal. But whatever the decision, please give us a yay or a nay so that we and others can get started on our building projects. My wife and I have learned just a couple of years ago that an adult son or daughter has more stuff than a child has. We are splitting at the seams, hoping to get relief from our small and overcrowded home. Matt would love to have his own space to be used as an art studio, a workshop, storage space, but having his own apartment would be even better. Yet it is just not feasible to build a workshop and then later decide that you could have built a dwelling. We got to decide one way or the other so we can get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skaczynski. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. The next topic is council response to public comment. Would someone like to make some comments? Councilmember Barentine.
I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I greatly appreciate, especially on the heels of the, I thought, well-written article on, from the Englewood Herald on the, homelessness. Jerry Walker, I appreciate the issues of trying to enforce the law and where we're going to go with that. I think that's part of what the Citizen Committee, as well as Change the Trend and some other groups, are trying to incorporate that conversation in as well. And I do think it was a good follow-up with Cohn. I appreciate the zoning issue. I think we should look into that as well. I mean, I know that on several occasions they have brought up issues with some insurance, and so we need to at least make sure that we're within those guidelines as well, especially with conditional use. It has not gone unnoticed. That is in my district, and it has not gone unnoticed by me, the number of people that are leaving out of there. 2 more businesses are leaving that I just found out about, and 60% is a huge amount for one half of one block in an area. JJ, the tape that you showed also brings up the issue of any shelter, any provider for services for the homeless ever advising or allowing their volunteers to, or encouraging the homeless, it is dangerous for them as well, to go and live in anybody's shed, in anybody's backyard. And that was devastating when we found out that one of the volunteers at Giving Heart, who was letting people stay in that shed and was not vetted and was is now in jail and with charges on child pornography. And while I understand they were charging for that shed as well, it brings up the issue of how safe are we really keeping homeless people if the services, the people who are providing services are suggesting that they go and live in somebody's backyard. I don't think that's a kindness, and it's also not legal. And then to have somebody assaulted in that situation who was homeless in that property, and then find out there were other people living in there is sad. And I hope that we don't find out that there's any other organizations that are doing the same, where they are having volunteers, unvetted apparently, or even if they are vetted, that for whatever kindness they think they're doing, that they're not allowing or encouraging any of their volunteers to have people on their property like that. So we need to look at that. But they bring up a good point of where we come in as we're partnering with organizations, where our liability comes in, because we were concerned previously, about 5 months ago, we heard that the organization was background checking the homeless, and we need to make sure that they're background checking the volunteers as well. I know in my church, when I volunteer, we've been background checked, so maybe that's something that the city needs to take on as well, so that we're not taking on some additional liability given the current situation that happened. And Jill, I feel for you. I have my son is still a young adult, and the most important thing to me is that I have provided a safe environment for him still, that my community is safe for him to live in, live, work, and play, learn, and that's part of our comp plan. We want to make sure that that's something that we're following through on, and my heart goes out to you that that's happening and that your daughters don't feel safe. And we are trying to have the conversation. Paul, I hope that you heard earlier, I think you were in the room when you heard that we were having the meeting for ADUs on Thursday, so I'm sure that you'll be attending as well, so that we're following through with the process and get a little bit more information on that. I greatly appreciate everybody coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more response? Councilmember Olson.
I wanted to respond to one other that hasn't been mentioned, and that's Mr. Millen on the ransomware, and ask that there be if we could get some information that's public to him regarding what we've experienced here and the work that we're doing on this. Thank you for being concerned about it. Probably a lot of people don't know we've gone through this, as well as other kinds of security breaches that cities often have to struggle with. But we're in the midst of trying to decide how to actually hire someone or have someone on our staff be more equipped to deal with these things as well. So thank you for your interest in that. I think everything else is fine. We're going to be talking about a few of these things in a bit anyway, so thank you. And I appreciate the ADU conversation, because Thursday night's important. And Mr. Skanitsky, if you can bring a lot of folks, because I've heard some folks say that those of us that are older and that have lived here for a while are the ones that are against these, and that is not the case. So I think it's really varied. It depends on life journeys and circumstances and what people need and want at this point. And so I look forward to seeing you and many others Thursday night, and we will finish after that to get forward, somehow take this forward one way or the other. It's been long enough.
Thank you. And I would like to thank all of you for coming this evening. I do hear your concerns, and we are trying to move forward in every one of these areas. And I also want to thank Mr. Cohn for coming. As always, thank you for the invitation. That's a great reminder to attend the Memorial Day celebration at Englewood High School this coming Sunday at 2 p.m. My husband and I have attended the last couple of years, and it is an amazing celebration honoring the veterans. I also want to thank you for the Mulkery Sanitarium. I had never heard of that, so that was very interesting. Also, I just want to respond to Mr. Skaczynski. Hopefully, we are going to get the information we need to take this to the next level soon. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for your input. We greatly appreciate it. Moving on to agenda item 8, communications, proclamations, and appointments. There is a proclamation declaring June 2018 as Men's Health Month to heighten the awareness of men's preventable health problems and increasing early detection and treatment of disease. Whereas, despite advances in medical technology and research, men continue to live an average of 5 years less than women, with Native American and African American men having the lowest life expectancy. And whereas educating the public and healthcare providers about the importance of a healthy lifestyle and early detection of male health problems will result in reducing rates of mortality from disease. And whereas men who are educated about the value that preventative health care can play in prolonging their lifespan and their role as productive family members will be more likely to participate in health screenings. And whereas fathers who maintain a healthy lifestyle are role models for their children and have happier, healthier children. And whereas the Men's Health Network worked with Congress to develop a national men's health awareness period as a special campaign to help educate boys and their families about the importance of positive health attitudes and preventative health practices. And whereas the Men's Health Month website has been established at www.menshealthmonth.org and features resources, proclamations, and information about awareness events and activities, including Wear Blue for Men's Health. And whereas the City of Englewood, Colorado will focus on a broad range of men's health issues, including heart disease, mental health, diabetes, and prostate, testicular, and colon cancer during Men's Health Month. And whereas the citizens of this city are encouraged to increase awareness of the importance of a healthy lifestyle, regular exercise, and medical checkups. Now, therefore, I, Rita Russell, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Englewood, Colorado, hereby proclaim the month of June 2018 as Men's Health Month, given under my hand and sealed this 21st day of May, 2018. And I just want you all to know that we have men in our lives that are very important to us, and so we just want you to take care of yourselves.
And that our one member who is a man is not missing because he's ill. We did not do anything.
All right. Thank you very much. Oh, actually, do we need to entertain a motion?
Move to approve our Men's Health Proclamation.
A second.
Any more discussion? Please vote.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 5 ayes.
Moving on to item 9, consent agenda items.
I move to approve consent agenda items A1, B1, 2, C1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's it.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Barentine.
Yes, I would like to go ahead and pull consent agenda number B2, please.
Okay, so we'll pull 9B2. I also would like to pull 9C2. So going back to approve 9A1, B1, C1, and 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 5 ayes.
Thank you. And now we will go back. The first one, I believe, is 9B2. I would entertain a motion for 9B2.
I move to approve B2.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Barentine.
I think we already made the motion and second for all of them, but if Mr. Brennan could please come forward.
Good evening.
Thank you very much. I apologize for the late pulling of this because I pulled it prior to the study session based on some questions that came to me from people who were attending, and I felt they were worth asking. So it's not something that I had kind of seen ahead of time, so I greatly appreciate your indulging me on this. When I realized that the way that they're reading this is to protect you have somebody that's coming and taking water out, and then they're agreeing to an augmentation is a substitute water supply plan that requires adequate replacement water to cover the depletion of water, ensuring Englewood's ability to exercise its senior water rights. So the question that got brought up was if they have the ability to augment it with water, that replacement, why don't they just use the replacement water that if they have water, why are they taking our water? And I think that that's kind of a good question so that we could get an explanation from you.
Yes, that augmentation plan, that is why we hire engineers to verify that their augmentation plan is actually correct. And what we're doing in this particular case is this is their second bite at the apple, so to speak. They filed their first application. All the opposers got to hear all the opposition's concerns as well as their expert witness testimony. And what they first claimed was these wells were non-tributary, which meant they didn't contribute water to the South Platte River. That was proven false during mediation. So when they came back, they came back with, okay, they're tributary wells, and here's our augmentation water. Well, what the crutch of this is how water moves through soil to get back to the river. And at this present time, we disagree with their analysis, and we feel that they will be depleting and not making the river whole. In doing so, will harm our senior rights, because our primary source is the South Platte River.
Okay, so basically, in the end, what we're arguing about is that we don't believe that the augmentation plan is adequate.
Correct.
Okay. I'd almost like to ask if that answers the question. But I thought that, and this is the second time you've presented this, but I thought it was a question that was worth making sure that we had public, so that people, when they're going back and reading this, understand it better. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 5 ayes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 9C2, carpet replacement of Civic Center third floor. Staff recommends that council approve by motion new carpeting for the finance office area on the third floor of the Civic Center and the Malley Center administration offices. Facility Service and Maintenance Administrator Dan Long is here. Good evening, Mr. Long, and I apologize also for pulling this at the last minute. I have a couple of questions. One of them is, was this a budgeted item?
Yes.
And where is it in the budget?
Want to read it correctly for you? For the Civic Center Finance Area and the Public Improvement Fund, Project 301005, Task 001, GL Division 1005, Civic Center Facility Rehab and Repairs.
Okay, I saw that, but when I actually went on the budget, in the budget book itself, I did not see those figures in the budget.
Right. When we put the budget together, basically, as I understand it, because this last year was my first crack at that, we have a bucketed amount, if you will, for what we term unscheduled projects. We know inevitably people are going to ask. Malley Center is another example. So we put money aside to address these larger projects. And that's why you don't see it itemized like that, because at that time, didn't know it was coming, had a pretty good idea we were going to be addressing it, but it wasn't identified yet.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I think what I missed here, and maybe this is because we have in the past asked for the budget page and then maybe just a little highlight on, because I know there is no line item in the budget book that they are lumped together, so that would help. The other question I have is, can you explain the math? I mean, are these rounded figures when you look, it says it has approved funding for 2018 of $205,602.24 as of March 31st. $741.18 has been spent, leaving a balance of $185,777.97.
Those were numbers I took off the March 31st budget statement we have.
Okay. So was the $205,000 on the March 31st budget statement also?
I don't have it in front of me, but I copied it from it.
Okay, all right. Because I mean, if you subtract the 741.18 from the 205, it ends up with like 204,961. So I was just curious.
I think without having a calculator in front of me, what I'm trying to show you is the balance at the end of the project. We'll have an ending balance of 185.
Okay, so you subtracted the 741.18 and then you also subtracted like the $20,000. Okay, all right. I appreciate that. Thank you for that explanation. Are there any other questions? All right. Did I already ask for a motion and a second on this? Could we have a motion?
Move to approve 9C2.
A second.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 5 ayes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Long. Okay, moving on to agenda item 10, public hearing. There is none. And then moving on to agenda item 11, ordinances, resolutions, and motions. 11A, approval of ordinances on first reading. 11A1, CB 12, retail liquor tasting. Staff is recommending council approve a bill for an ordinance establishing retail liquor tasting in accordance with Colorado Revised Statutes 12-47-301-10 and applicable provisions of the Englewood Municipal Code. Tastings are a sampling of malt, Venus, or spirituous liquors that may occur on the premises of a retail liquor store licensee or liquor licensed drugstore licensee by adult patrons of the licensee pursuant to the provisions of Section 12-47-301-10. Our staff source is Deputy City Clerk Jackie McKinnon. Good evening, Ms. McKinnon.
Good evening. We're pulling double duty here. So on May 7th, we brought forward, or the clerk's office brought forward the study to the study session, the tasting permit, and we discussed and answered questions that council had at that time. And I just really believe Ms. Shen today that came in from Kent Cellars summarized it the best, that the small business owners would benefit from this and what the liquor stores really want to do with this. So at this time, if you had any more questions regarding this, I'm more than happy to answer those.
Are there any questions?
I move to approve 11-1 CB12 on retail liquor tasting permits.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion? Councilmember Barentine.
I appreciate the business owner coming forward. I am still concerned, kind of like the way that this process happened, and it didn't seem like it was coming more from the business community, but just kind of going along with everyone. And with what some other communities are doing, and I'm not sure how well this is going to fit with us. I would like to see some more additional enforcement all the way around with liquor issues going on, but I will be supporting it at this time. I've already expressed the concern with the amount, and we've been told that the liquor store under their license will go ahead and still be responsible if there's any problems with intoxication or somebody that they may be leaving that location impaired because they've been drinking what could end up being about 2 drinks in what could be a very short period of time. So my concerns have been a little allayed, but I hope that we have some really strict enforcement on this and understand that we want to keep our community safe. So, but I will be supporting it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will not be supporting this for a lot of the concerns that I have talked about before. I am very concerned about vulnerable populations in this city, and so my personal convictions will not allow me to support it. So, is there any more discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 4 ayes and 1 nay. The 1 nay being Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 11A2, an IGA with Arapahoe County for Community Development Block Grant and Home Program. Staff recommends council approve a bill for an ordinance authorizing the execution of a 3-year intergovernmental cooperation agreement between Arapahoe County and the City of Englewood relating to the conduct of Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership programs for program grant years 2019 and 2021. Our staff source is Director of Community Development, Brad Powers. Good evening, Mr. Powers.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. I want to briefly reiterate some of the issues that we'd like you to consider relative to this ordinance. We are recommending you pass this ordinance to approve and authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Arapahoe County to continue our community development block grant and home improvement partnership programs through the Department of Housing and Urban Development for the grant years 2019 through 2021. The City of Englewood initially authorized participation in community development, I'll just say CDBG from this point forward. CDBG funding in 1994 was the original date for the city's involvement. The CDBG and home grant programs, as I said, are provided by HUD, and they're intended to provide decent housing, improved public facilities, economic opportunities for low and disadvantaged, low and moderate income residents of the City of Englewood. The Arapahoe County receives the funding from the federal government and then in turn distributes it to the participating communities. The county is in the process of reapplying for their urban county designation, and they're requesting our participation or indication of our participation for this approval year or these next approval 3 years. That's the reason for the proposed IGA. In terms of a little bit of background on this program, which has proved very popular over the years, since the 1992, the city has received approximately $4.26 million in funding of these types of funds, CDBG, and our allocation this cycle is about $115,000. So the majority of Englewood's grants are provided to a specific program, which is the Energy Efficiency Englewood, or E3 program, and that is funds that are provided to qualified owner-occupied low and moderate income residents of Englewood that provide opportunity for primarily energy efficiency and energy system upgrades for their homes. The grants are for up to $8,000, and they also require about a $2,000 match from the homeowner to participate in the program. As I said, this program has proven very popular over the years. Since 2010, we've assisted 115 residents in Englewood to provide these types of improvements in their home. In terms of the folks who are participating in the program, 23% of the program recipients have been seniors, 50% have been female head of households, and the average tenure or their residency tenure in Englewood has been 16 years in their home. As I said, the 2018 allocation of $115,000 will enable us to assist approximately 13 homeowners in the coming year between, say, now and next fall, and we have approximately 20 people on the waiting list. So what tonight is not about is about allocating or asking for specific funding level or asking for a specific funding round or anything like that. There's no city investment associated with this. This is merely whether or not you would place your desire with the county to represent the City of Englewood with the other municipalities that are included in this program when the Arapahoe County provides their information to the federal government for the next round of funding.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Power? Councilmember Barentine?
This is because of the additional requirements that the federal government has been putting on this funding. Douglas County did not take the funding. Castle Rock has had some issues. We've heard more lawsuits that have come from based off of the grant. Where are we at with all of that? I mean, I've asked previously for us to explore those issues a little and what we might be agreeing to by accepting this money, and where are we at with that?
Well, again, this evening is not about accepting money. This evening is about remaining receptive to applying for funds for the next 3-year cycle. So we're not asking you to apply for funds this evening. We're asking you to join the eligibility that Arapahoe County would provide. As far as the Douglas County issues are concerned, I'm not sure that that's had a direct impact on our programs. And I'm not sure that they necessarily would be, because I think that's a decision for the political leadership and the leadership in various communities to enter into these discussions about including in these fundings or not. As I've said, we've had a very specific program in place for a period of time, and we have not had any issues in terms of challenges to the spending of those particular funds that we've done here in Englewood over time.
I know we're not asking for particular funds. What we're being asked to do is support Arapahoe County in its request to get these funds from the federal government, and it is specifically those issues for the requirement coming in from the federal government with Arapahoe County accepting those funds that then burdens the entire county to certain requirements under the federal government. That's exactly what I'm asking for additional information on, which is the issue that Douglas County took up. How Douglas County and their political structure makes decisions. You're right, they have autonomy and they can do that, and they can do with the funds after they have them or don't have them as they wish. I'm asking for the additional burden that may be coming, or expectation from the federal government coming to Arapahoe County accepting this money, and by Arapahoe County accepting this money then burdening us or making us under that requirement for the feds by supporting the Arapahoe County accepting this money, which is exactly what you're asking us to do tonight. I know we're not accepting actual money.
Sure. I think one of the things that in terms of the response is, up until this point, from 2010 through 2018, we've been able to operate the program, the E3 program, through our existing allocation, and that has not been challenged, and we haven't had any particular reporting requirements or any increase, for lack of a term, burden from the federal government in terms of the expenditure of those funds for the operation of this program. That's not to say that requirements may not change in the next 3 years. If the requirements do change in the next 3 years, when we're asking you to fund our subsequent cycles, we'll bring those changes for your consideration, and you can make the decision at that point in time whether or not to apply for these funds.
And are you aware of any anybody, any municipality, any county, any governmental entity that's accepted these funds that has been part of a lawsuit with the federal government, with them making additional requirements on them because they accepted the funds?
I'm not aware of that.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Olson?
Unless there are other questions, I would like to move to approve it so we can have a discussion. The question at hand is not directly related to us deciding on this particularly tonight. It may for future things related to it, but not in this particular thing.
Okay, are you making a motion?
Yeah, I am, unless the other two, I just saw lights come up, so.
Okay. Councilmember Martinez, do you have a question for?
I have a comment, so I'll second.
Okay. There we go. Now we can have.
So it's moved and seconded. Okay. Is there any more discussion?
Now it's her turn.
Okay. Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Powers, for bringing this forward. Our community, our residents have benefited greatly from this program over the tenure of time we've done it, and I think it's a huge benefit. So I hope that we would still be able to get this funding going forward. I'm very much in favor of this IGA tonight, and I will be supporting it.
Councilmember Wink.
Thank you. Thank you also, Mr. Powers. This is a tremendous program, and even there have been many instances during which I have heard from constituents and of the value and the support that this program has provided, and I wish we had more so that we didn't have such a large waiting list. So I am wholeheartedly supporting this as well this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And I had some of the same questions, and it's actually interesting that on Saturday there was an article, and somebody forwarded this to me, that the fair housing rule has been changed by the current administration, which deals with a portion of AFFH, And so since that is referenced on page 4 in the printed packet in number 12 and also on page 6, number 20, where it talks about affirmatively fair, let's see, I don't even remember what that stands for, number 12. It is it has to do with the Fair Housing Act.
Is that section 20 on page 6? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. Oh, and here it is also on page 4. Affirmatively further fair housing within its jurisdiction. So that has been changed, and so I don't know how long that takes for it actually to go into law. So I want to make sure that the city is protected from lawsuits, and so I will not be supporting it. Councilmember Olson.
I believe a lot of new stuff is being brought up in a way that's not really helpful for this decision in particular. If we can't vote on this decision, I would like to table this and bring it back in June when we actually have 7 people here. We can get a response with different kinds of changes that some are claiming have been made and find out what their implications are. This has been a tremendous, tremendous program for Englewood. I would not want to leave ourselves out of this. Is there a deadline that we're going to have to make if we don't decide tonight? Are we left out of the county then?
Well, we'll have to talk about with the county in terms of their deadlines with HUD. So we touch base with them in terms of...
If we wait until June to make a decision on this, will that make it impossible for us to be a part of this?
I cannot answer that tonight specifically.
Okay. I would suggest that we postpone this.
Okay.
I withdraw my motion to approve, and I would re-motion to postpone it until the first opportunity in June that we can take this back up with any new information. Anybody want to second it?
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Councilmember Brandtine, do you have discussion?
Yes. It is, this program has been a huge benefit to our community. It is the addition of the affirmatively furthering fair housing that has been the issue, and that has been an issue that has been brought up now for the last 2 years. This is not a new issue or a new discussion, and I have asked for information to be brought forward on how that was progressing or how that was affecting municipalities and counties, especially after the decision from Douglas County and the argument that happened about this issue in Castle Rock with people turning away, not people, government entities turning away federal funding because they didn't want to come under the affirmatively furthering fair housing. I agree with Councilmember Olson that if at this point everybody would like a little bit more information on this so that we can have a discussion, I join them in that. I would like to have more information and a discussion on it so that we could take a program and hopefully do the best we can with the city without unintended consequences.
Thank you. Councilmember Martinez?
Thank you. I would just like to not be left out of this, and so I guess for me, I will vote to postpone it as long as once we find out the deadline information, maybe then we can revisit if it's going to be before June. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
I don't know that I'm making sense. But.
It made perfect sense to me. Thank you. Councilmember Olson?
I think what I understand Councilmember Martinez saying is that if we're postponing it tonight, we get ourselves out of the loop. That is not what we're intending with this. I don't believe that any new information really matters one way or the other. I think we can vote yes on this tonight and still get out of it. I think the new information that's coming up doesn't probably matter. However, if we only have 3 or less votes tonight, this isn't going to go forward, and then it's done. So I would prefer to postpone it for that reason.
Again, what we heard from Arapahoe County was the deadline to HUD was sometime in mid-June. We'd have to talk to them about the specific date and whether or not there's any flexibility around that date.
Okay.
And again, just to reiterate, I don't know that it makes a difference for your debate this evening, but the IGA is not tied to requesting funding. You still have that in your control. You could request additional information in terms of future funding cycles related to the impacts of current and future rules that may be in place.
I totally understand that and get it and would vote yes for that reason.
Thank you. City Manager, would you like to weigh in on that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And unbeknownst to Mr. Power, since he's been standing at the podium, just got an email from community development staff enunciating that the county has responded to an email request sent earlier today stating that June 4th would be fine for us to take this issue back up and have the council entertain again the information on the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing Act and its potential implications to the city of Englewood.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? So we are voting on a motion to table this till June 4th. If there's no other questions or discussions, please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show. 4 ayes and 1 nay. The 1 nay being Councilmember Wink.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 11C1, Englewood Rec Center flat roofs and skylight replacements. Staff recommends council approve by motion a contract with Garland DBS for the amount of $399,536 to replace the specified flat roofs and the skylight over the kiddie pool. Our staff source is Facility Services and Maintenance Administrator Dan Long. Good evening again, Mr. Long.
Good evening again. The 5 roofs that are identified are the ones that, under my own personal experience since joining the city of Englewood, have been extremely problematic. Anytime we get any type of rain, snow event, we have rain, snow under those 5 roofs. As Garland's roof inspection pointed out, those roofs are in terrible shape. I was pretty surprised the first time I walked them. The EDPM is, in some places, almost 2 feet from the parapet, which means the membrane is shrinking so much it's almost 2 feet away from the side wall it's attached to. In addition to that, almost all our caps along these roofs, which are the metal accessories, appliances that help hold that roof in place, those have been, I'll say, maintained or attempted to be maintained over the years with multitudes of caulking and reattaching, etc. These roofs are due. The skylight was identified by my predecessor as needing to be replaced. It's my opinion that if we're going to do that skylight needing to be replaced, as long as we're doing that roof, now's the time to do it. And that's pretty much the story of those roofs. One thing I do want to call to council's attention, I've always wanted to try and make sure everybody was aware of this as we talk about the roofs for the rec center. We have 2 more roofs that will need to be done. These are the high roofs next year. But these in particular were the ones I really pointed at for 2018 because of the condition.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Long, Councilmember Barentine?
So I believe that the roof or part of the roof, now that you've kind of designated that the high roof and the low roof, it wasn't that long ago that that they were done, right? Something was done on that roof. So if you're separating them out, maybe that was different.
What you're referring to is 2 years ago, the tile roof. Michael Mayer referred to it as a high roof, was replaced. These are flat roofs. These flat roofs, there's these 2 low ones in the back on the north side of the rec center. I'm referring to the high flat roofs on the north side of the rec center will need it to be done next year.
Okay. How many sections of the Englewood Rec Center do you break the roof up into?
Boy, the consultant has got it into many roofs, but at the end of next year with these two, we will have replaced all roofs.
Okay.
It's probably in the area of 8 or 9, because when the roof that was replaced 2 years ago, that is actually broken up into 4, maybe 5 sections, if I remember the diagram right.
Okay.
It's just, to
And
me, it's
wasn't there another
semantics of
part
what-
that was done like within the last 8 or 10 years? I mean, how long, what's kind of the lifespan that you're looking at once we get this done?
20 years.
20?
Yes.
Okay, and altogether the roof is in, you said like 9 basic or 8 basic sections?
Yeah, I don't have a complete diagram of the rec center in front of me, but they really have it split up nicely
Okay.
in their inspection.
So when we're doing this, we're doing that 5 sections of what you're referring to as flat roof with the anticipation that the high one will have to be done in another 2 years. That was done 2 years ago.
No.
A separate section of it. Okay.
Yeah, let me explain that.
Sure.
And I knew when you did this what you meant.
I'm trying.
That high roof is the sloped roof that you see on the rec center. That's what was done 2 years ago.
Okay.
On the north side of the rec center, there's low flat roofs, the ones identified in this request, and then there's high ones, which are probably about halfway up the sloped roof you're referring to. Completely different sections.
All
So
right.
flat roofs and sloped roofs, and the sloped what was done 2 years ago.
Okay, and for the ones that we've done in the past, are we seeing that lifespan, that 20-year lifespan realizing itself, or are we?
The ones that Michael did 2 years ago were the first ones to be done. These the flat roofs have not been touched before. He only did those sloped roofs.
Since the building's been built?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you for the information.
A fairly good picture of that, if I remember right. Yeah. If you look at that picture in your packet, what I was referring to is when the consultants break down the roofs, all these little sections get broken out as different sections. So when you ask me how many sections there are, I just don't remember the count of all those little areas. The area in the middle here, the 2 large skylights, is what was done 2 years ago. That's the sloped roofs.
That's what was leaking onto the track?
Correct.
Previously?
Yes.
That they fixed. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions also. Did we get competitive bids?
Yes, there were 5 competitive bids. They're listed on, I want to say, page 2 of Garland's proposal. Yes.
Okay.
It's actually page 3.
Okay, all right, thank you. And so I did find the flat roof in the capital projects budget, and I couldn't find the skylight, but it was included in the public improvement fund.
Correct.
Okay, and were we planning to do the skylight? I mean, I understand we figure out that it needs to be done while we're doing the roof. I mean, that makes sense.
If I remember right, I think it was planned for next year. And I knew that we'd probably be doing these roofs this year based on my experience. That's why I asked for it to be put in the budget for this year. So I just brought the skylight in.
Okay, thank you. It makes sense to do the skylight when you're replacing the roof. Thank you so much. Any more questions for Mr. Long? Do we already have a motion?
No, I'll move to approve 11C1, the ERC flat roofs and skylight replacements.
Second.
Okay, please vote. Did you get that? Who?
It was Amy.
It was Amy.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 5 ayes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too. Moving on to agenda item 11C2, resolution for year-end supplemental appropriation to the 2017 budget. Staff recommends City Council approve the attached resolution for a year-end supplemental appropriation to the 2017 budget. Director of Finance and Administrative Services, Kathleen Wrinkle, is here to speak with us. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. This is our annual request for appropriation in any areas that we have exceeded the appropriations that you provided for us in the budget approval. So tonight, I really hope not to be up here with any supplementals at all, but we did have two areas that exceeded the appropriations you provided. One was the trolley, and what happened there was that we had some unexpected maintenance that was required, and then the fuels ran a little bit over what we had estimated in the budget. I'm happy to say it was only $35,000. Okay. The other one is the stormwater drainage area, and this is $220,000. This was the emergency repairs at the Oxford station that the city manager made you aware of on September 5th that we were going to have to repair. So those are the only two. And I'd like to ask for your approval to have these appropriations so that we have not exceeded our budget for 2017.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councilmember Barentine.
I certainly appreciate the one at Oxford Station. I think that there wasn't an opportunity to really kind of anticipate that. And it was a true emergency, and I appreciate the city manager's presentation on that back in September. My concern is about the trolley, and when we're talking $35,000, I realize that that may not, in our spending habits, be a lot of money. But if we spend about $70,000 on that, that's 50%. That's a lot of increase for what we're providing. So I would have liked for the money that we do budget, that it costs, to have come to be part of this. You couldn't do that with Oxford because it wasn't budgeted at all. But the trolley is budgeted, and I thought that I couldn't find it, but I thought our spending on it was only $70,000. So if we're increasing that, pardon?
It's just shy of $400,000 total. We get most of it reimbursed by RTD. This $35,000 was also reimbursed by RTD. Right. It just did not go back against our expenses. It went into our revenue counting.
Right. Our cost is not $400,000.
The total trolley cost is about $400,000. Our piece is only what would have been fares if we charged fares, and in 2017 it was estimated at $60,000.
So this is for fuel and maintenance?
Additional fuel.
And what was the fuel and maintenance that we budgeted for, just that amount?
I do not have those line items.
Okay.
Those were
so
not
when we have
separate.
that line item number, which is not $400,000, then $35,000, just the portion of what that increase is what I would like to see in there, and that's what's concerning, is that I think for what we budgeted, it's kind of disproportionately high at $35,000. So I would like to have that information when we get these put forward.
Understand.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have one correction. It says for the fuel maintenance costs, it's $35,000, and then for the emergency storm drain repairs, it's $220,000, which I think should be $255,000 for the total costs.
This was to cover the overrun.
So the total use of funds is only $235,000.
220 was the information I was given by our accounting department.
Right. For the emergency drain repairs at Oxford Station, it's $220,000.
Yes.
And then I'm adding the $235 to $220 to get the total use of funds.
Okay, I'm with you.
And so it says $235. I think if you add those two together, it should be $255. But maybe I'm seeing something wrong too.
$255 total. I think what they did was draw a line on the second page in the resolution. Is that where you're looking? There are two different funds, which is why we separated them and really didn't add them together on the communication. $35,000 out of general,
okay.
$220 out of the storm drain fund.
Total use is $235.
Pardon me?
The total
Mayor.
use of
You're
funds.
seeing the use. You're seeing the source, and then there's also the use. So they balance each other out. So it's split on your iCompass sheet there. So that you see the source of funds is 220, and then the use of funds is 220.
So we're asking for approval of the funds from the unassigned balance of 220 to be spent in the expenses.
Right.
They're separate funds. One's the general fund, so the trolley comes out of the general fund, and the stormwater comes out of the stormwater fund. That's a separate proprietary fund just for those dollars.
Right. So my question is then, what is the total use of funds?
Well, the total use of funds for the general fund is $35,000, and the total use of funds in the stormwater fund is the 220.
Because we account for them separately, we don't add them together for a total for you.
Yeah, the total. If you're looking for total between the two funds together, you'd be right. It'd be 255, but they're separate funds.
Okay, so if they're separate, my question is then why is it 235? Do you understand what I'm asking?
No, I don't see the numbers you're referring to, Mayor. I'm looking at.
It's on the bottom of the resolution.
Oh, the bottom of the reso. Okay. Sorry.
I see that.
Oh, I see that now too. You're right. Gotcha. Yeah, that's incorrect. And again, because you have two disparate funds that are involved here. So I don't think you can enunciate the total use of funds being the 235. I guess they're both separate. Need to remain separate.
Point of clarification, are you saying then it should be just separated out that we're voting on a $35,000 and then a $220,000?
That's correct, Counselor.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And I do appreciate that she
I want to fix
brought that up because it does make it appear as if it's either, if it shouldn't be included, then they shouldn't be put together at all, but if they're supposed to be together, they're not added right.
That's correct. And,
Okay.
and again,
That's
I didn't
fine.
write this reso, but I might recommend that the council amend that to strike that because, again, their total use of funds, while in aggregate for both funds is 255, we have to deal with them fund by fund. We can't add those together.
Okay, so if we just strike that line, total use of funds altogether, it would be accurate. Okay. All right, thank you. Councilmember Olson.
So I move to approve 11C2 with the amendment of total use of funds of $235,000 being struck from the document. That is what you're suggesting, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there is no total.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 5 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 12, general discussion. The first item is Mayor's Choice. I would like to ask the council to consider releasing the portion of the executive session where discussion occurred outside of the law. That is, what is allowed to be discussed in executive session. According to Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6-402F2, while personnel matters is not defined, it is provided that this term does not include discussions of any member of a local public body, any elected official, the appointment of any person to fill a vacancy in a local public body or elected office, or discussion of personnel policies that do not require or discussion of a particular employees. Mr. Keck requested this portion of the executive session to discuss a personnel matter in which council members became the object of the discussion. While I did object at the time, the discussion unfolded so fast it caught me off guard, and I depend on the city attorney to keep things on track. The city manager should not have brought this topic to the council since the entire topic is not permitted in executive session. Furthermore, in order to discuss an employee in public, it must be documented the employee has been given the choice to discuss the matter in public. Therefore, I am making a motion to release the portion of the executive session which occurred on May 7th, 2018, where discussion occurred outside of the law. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Councilmember Barentine?
I would like to ask the city attorney, I did not know that council could do that.
Matters for attorney-client privilege are treated differently than the other matters, the other exceptions. This is an exception for, or this was an executive session for personnel matters. And the reason to go into executive session for personnel matters is to protect the privacy of a member of personnel. I am struggling with this one a little bit because I work for a divided council right at the moment. And my interpretation of the law is probably more stringent than part of the council might like and less stringent than the other. But it's my read of the law. And I don't believe that anything illegal took place during the executive session. However, if this council, by majority vote, wants to release that portion of the personnel discussion was recorded, and if this governing body wants to, as a majority, vote to release that executive session, understanding there may be some privacy rights associated with the member of staff who was being discussed, and the mayor and I did not have a chance to discuss this, the ramifications of this, before this was just now brought up. I would be concerned about privacy rights of the individual who was the discussion, who was the focus of that discussion. Can you do it? Yes. Will there be ramifications? I don't know. Could there be ramifications? Yes.
I have a second question. I assume that we have documentation from that employee, as she brought up, that provided that they had knowledge that they were going to be discussed in an executive session?
I did discuss that with the employee prior to the meeting, and they did not enunciate any reservations about that being discussed with the council.
Is there a requirement for any documentation to be there that that employee agreed to that?
I don't read CORA to require that it be a written documentation.
Well, that's all of my questions. I had objected to the executive session after we came out of it, so I already made that clear last time. But I just wanted to make sure this is something that council has the ability to do.
Is there any further discussion?
I will be voting no on this. I believe it's inappropriate. It's a personnel issue that we went in for, and it was good reason to be there, and I'm not at all in favor of releasing it at this point in protection of the personnel.
Thank you. Councilmember Wink?
Thank you. I will also be voting no. I think this was appropriately conducted.
Thank you. Councilmember Barentine?
I objected to the meeting when we came out. I do not believe that executive sessions are intended for council, elected officials, or staff to accuse or attack other elected officials with impunity, with no ability for vetting the information's truth or accuracy and causing chaos and damage in secret without public transparency. And so I will be voting yes.
Thank you. Any further comments? Please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show. 2 ayes and 3 nays. The 3 nays being Councilmember Martinez, Olson, and Wink.
Thank you. Going on to 12B, Councilmember's choice. Who would like to go first? Councilmember Martinez?
I just have something quick. I attended the Aloha Cherry Lynn event. I know some folks in our audience did as well. And it was a really great event. It was really well attended. And it was really neat to see all the photos that they had from years past. You could go in and look up your class photos and pictures of the fun events. And it was really a great time. And I'm really that happy I was able to attend and that it was so well attended. And that was my elementary school, same as Mayor Pro Tem Russell, so it was nice to be able to say goodbye. So it was fun.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I missed it. Councilmember Olson?
Thank you. I want to say good luck to all three of our candidates running in District 1 tomorrow, and thank you to all three of them for being willing to do this, especially in the face of a divided council where we had a good group of great candidates, of which we could not agree on because at least half would not go beyond one person. So I am very thankful for the three. They all were those that did come forward to us. I think it would be great to serve with any one of them. I wish them all the best of luck tomorrow. Secondly, I would like to ask that we consider in our budget conversations coming up in the next months the EAF performance review. It got sidetracked by a request for, ironically, an executive session. And I think that it got so clouded in that, then we never really came back to it. I think that we're in a great place to be looking at all of our properties, how everything runs, and I would like to at least reconsider that and figure out what that might cost. And if we want to budget it in the next year, that perhaps that's the best way to use it. The second part of the budget thing, which also might be a bit of a rub, is I had meant to bring this up last week. Thank you to staff for producing the request again for a council packet and how much it costs for producing them. I somehow had the impression that it was only $500-600 and split between two people needing paper packets. I figured, fine, if we have to do that, but it's almost $17,000 that really a person could just print, a click of the finger to print at home. So I'd like to reconsider that as well in the next year's budget and what's needed. This is really costly, especially since we don't legally have to be producing. I think that was also something that came out from this too. We do not have to legally be producing a hard copy. Then let's figure out a way to shave some money off of this and make sure everybody can get what they need, but perhaps not the way that we're doing it, which is a bit more exorbitant than I think would need. And then finally, I had a wonderful opportunity to have Councilmember Wink join me this weekend, who I discovered she was a DU grad 3 times, and I invited her to an alumni event. So you might be seeing a video or a photo out with Michelle Cohn, who came back to as an honoree at the University of Denver too. It was very fun. So thank you, Councilmember Wink, for joining me. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Wink.
No report from me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barentine?
I, too, greatly appreciate the 3 people who have run for District 1. I had the opportunity to go to the forum that was held at Sacred Grace, and I thought all 3 did a very good job. I, too, regret that half of this council could not come to a decision on one person. So, but that is part of having different opinions on what our role is as council. But I regret that half of this council couldn't go ahead and see their way clear to go ahead and agree on what I thought were some pretty good people being proposed. I agree with Councilmember Olson. I do regret what happened with EVE. The Englewood Environmental Foundation, the certificate of participation corporation that was done and given assets of this community and not watched very well. That's an issue that Doug Cohn brought up, I think, about 5 or 6 years ago, and it takes a long time to wrap your head around the implications of that. The one thing I think that Councilmember Olson has a little backwards was that the performance audit was not waylaid
the forensic audit was what was originally requested, and it was waylaid by then asking for a performance audit that all of council then agreed was not really going to accomplish what we wanted. It wasn't going to provide the information or the peace of mind on how things had been handled to address some very serious concerns brought up in 2015 by our own city manager about how money was being spent, who it was being given to, and that was on the heels of our chief financial officer, Frank Gregoire, quitting in part over the issues happening with payments being made. This is not an attempt to embarrass anybody or gotcha, or it's an attempt to go ahead and be responsible stewards of the funds and the assets that we have in the city. And what was requested, what we thought was the resolution to this, was a forensic audit, and without any other discussion, all of a sudden, all that was presented to us was a performance audit, which was not going to accomplish the diligence and stewardship that's needed to go ahead and put those questions to rest or resolve the issues that might have been happening. So I do agree that the forensic audit should come forward again.
Point of order. Is this now a topic area? I was asking that it be a council request. Is it now a topic area we're going to discuss?
It's exactly the same as what you were requesting. I would like to bring the forensic audit back as a council request.
Are you finished, Councilmember Brantine?
I just thought
Thank
it
you.
was. I just thought it was only appropriate to give it a little bit of background for it, and
Thank you.
in my opinion, a correction. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I did have one other thing. I do appreciate the mayor bringing forward the executive session. I objected to it that night. I objected to it during the meeting. I do believe it went beyond the bounds. I am sorry, did not realize that this council could go ahead and make that decision, but I'm glad at least it got brought up so that the public knows that there's some concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. City manager's report.
No report. I just apologize to the public for leaving this evening. I attended my daughter's award ceremony at Englewood High School, and she received a very prestigious award, and so I was pleased for the ability to attend that, so thank you.
Well, thank you and congratulations.
Congratulations. Yes.
What was it?
It's not for you, it's for her.
No, she received an outstanding student award for academic achievement as a freshman. She does has some learning disabilities with her vision and hearing, and she's overcome that, and they recognize her for that, and I'm very proud of her for that.
That is great.
Congratulations to her and to the parents who helped.
And the school.
I did almost forget, because that got clouded by the positive thing with my daughter. We do have a wastewater open house. That's coming up very quickly. That is on our calendar, and I hope that those who wish to attend will do so. That will be at our plant. I'm losing my mind here on the date. The flyer's in the back. So the flyer's on the table where Mr. Walker and Mr. Scott are sitting there. So you can pick up a flyer there.
Thank you. City attorney's report.
No report this evening.
Thank you. Just one quick announcement. Remind you to come to the ADU meeting on Thursday night at 6 o'clock. This meeting is adjourned.
Perfect timing.
Sometimes I drink.
Yeah, today I drank a ton of water. Definitely.
Well, good. I'm glad you made it.
Me too. I would have been embarrassed.
Yes. Actually, you could say, excuse me, we have a bio break.
Oh, yes, that's right. We can do that.